Say my name. I am awake. I am the danger. I am the one who knocks.
Welcome back to Breaking into Breaking Bad with Clifford and Caleb Humphrey. Today we discuss Season 5, Episode 2, Madrigal. Cabes, why don't you give us a rundown of what happens in this episode?
Yeah, so this one starts off with Walt being the good soul that he is, helping Jesse find the ricin that he so eloquently planted in the Roomba of Jesse's house, and all the cleaning that went into that whole stage, as you will. We also are introduced to a new character in the show by the name of Lydia, who worked at the Madrigal plant with Gus, or with the other German counterpart that supplied Gus's equipment for Pollos Hermanos. And also we see that Hank and Gomi have been able to track down all the bank accounts and have been able to put a freeze on all the money that was paying all the employees of Gus that Mike hired to keep quiet. And so we see that Mike has to deal with the repercussions of that. And towards the end, we see that Walt, Jesse, and Mike decide to go in as three-way partners into cooking again. So it was a good episode, kind of lays the groundwork for what is going to happen and what they're going to have to deal with going forward.
The title of this episode is Madrigal. Pretty self-explanatory, I'd say. Don't you think?
Yep.
So that's the name of the German company. We can just go right into the intro. So it begins, the way that these often do, in a way that I would categorize this one as one of the ones that's meant to confuse you. You're in a context. It's similar to the one we saw where the two brothers pull up in their suits and get on the ground and start crawling on their elbows.
Correct.
And it's just you don't have any context. It's just throwing you for a loop. So this one is pretty funny. It's this very clean commercial kitchen where there's a man in a suit testing sauces in front of German scientists in lab coats. It's just very weird.
What was your favorite sauce?
Yeah, right. The ketchup. Yeah.
Franch.
Yeah. Ranch. Yeah. Franch. Yeah. So this guy is obviously somebody important. He's very strange, though. I mean, this guy, I guess. So he seems spaced out. The man in the suit is testing the sauces. He's dipping the hash browns in the sauces, testing the sauces, and then he just moves the sauces away and just starts eating the hash browns. He seems just spaced out, though. And then the woman comes in and says, the police are here. They want to talk to you. And then he commits suicide. We get the sense, though, that he already knew it was coming, and that's why he's spaced out.
Well, she said they're here again. So he knew the writing was on the wall after, and they even showed a picture of him and Gus where the FBI were in his office waiting for him. Yeah, so I think he knew that whatever his part of the business was supplying was illegal, and so he knew his time was done.
Well, it's still not really clear what his role was. What did he do that was so obviously illegal? He clearly thought that the evidence against him was damning, and so he took his own life in order to avoid the whole process. And as he knew his life was going to end with life in prison, so he took his own life. But it's all meant to just add confusion to us and make us wonder. And so I think it was cleverly done, and I think it was effective. We're left. We know there's some connection. They're taking down the logo of Pollos Hermanos, in that scene there, and but we're still not sure. Later on, I'm reflecting back on it, and it seems like Lydia is a source for the sood. So what do we call it? The chemical?
No, the methylamine.
Methylamine, not the sood. Sood
Right.
is what you get when you don't have methylamine. Yeah,
Pseudo.
methylamine
Yep.
is what makes it blue, though, right? That's the
Right.
trademark.
It's the P2P cook as opposed to the using the pseudo. Yeah, two different kinds of cooking meth.
Yeah, two different ways.
Got it.
So that's the title of the episode. That's the intro to the episode. So we can just jump right in. So yeah, it starts with Walt. It's clever. It shows him creating a false cigarette of ricin with salt in it, and we hear a conversation that he had with Jesse, playing, in his mind or something, where we learn that Jesse is extremely distraught that he cannot find the ricin cigarette. Now, I've made a big deal about this the whole time. It never seemed plausible to me that Huel was able to lift the cigarette pack from Jesse's pocket while he's, patting him down, lifted the one cigarette out, put the whole pack back. None of it made sense. So it's gratifying, I guess, to me to see them having to do these extra things to show how do we fill in the gaps. Okay, well, yeah, what is it? It's plausible that Jesse would say, okay, so it wasn't the cigarette that poisoned the kid, but what happened to that cigarette? Where did it go? So now they have to figure out, well, we're going to have to explain. Walt took it, and he had to explain. He had to help Jesse find it, and he planted it, and that's what happened. So they're filling in it. So that was gratifying. But why would they include that? Well, on one hand, yeah, they're filling in the gaps for something that seemed kind of implausible, but they're also emphasizing Jesse's normal role, which is to be a kind of conscience for the show. He's the one who's distraught. And why is he distraught? Because it's possible that if that cigarette's somewhere, that some kid somewhere could get it and could get sick. And that thought terrifies Jesse. And it's interesting. It doesn't bother Walt at all, right? I mean,
he also says
course,
that I almost killed you, Walt, over this whole thing.
Right. Yeah, that was really fascinating because it's just full of irony, because our perspective is we see Jesse eaten up with guilt over possibly killing Walt, in Jesse's mind, unjustly, but we know that it was actually just. His anger toward Walt was actually justified because Walt was manipulating things. So it's a very clever perspective that the writers of the show have put we, the audience, in, so that we can see these two characters and see them from the perspective where Jesse looks very innocent and naive. Even he's morally sensitive to a degree that is naive, and we see Walt playing this role of, oh, Jesse, it's okay, I forgive you, it's no big deal, like, I'm not going to hold it against you, when really the fault is really all on Walt, not on Jesse. So,
but it's also like how the lengths that Walt was willing to go to with the pretending to search for this ricin with Jesse the whole time, and he knew that he couldn't be the one to find it. He had to lure Jesse into be the one that needed to find it, and him putting it in the Roomba, and then right when Jesse finds it, he goes, "Oh, I'll take that. All right, all better. Anyways, you want a beer?" Like, he was just trying to move on as quick as possible. It's just
right.
You could tell
but
that
he knows that
his consciousness has just gone, no longer there.
And yet he does have, like you note, he does have unusual patience with Jesse's extra sensitive conscience. I'm thinking of that passage in the New Testament where it talks about meat that's been sacrificed to idols, and Paul says, look, we know that those idols aren't really, gods, and that meat sacrificed to them isn't really meat that's been sacrificed to a god. But if there's someone among you who does think that and thinks it's really wrong to eat meat that's been sacrificed to idols, then for the sake of your weaker brother, the brother who's got the more sensitive conscience, you should just refrain so you don't put him in a state of mind where he's just unduly agitated. And in a way, we sort of see Walt. Pardon all of the connections here, but Walt is sort of having this extra patience with Jesse's extra sensitive conscience, and so, like you said, he's going to go through all the motions, and he's going to put on this big act to pretend like, yeah, no, it's okay. He knows he has to sort of give an explanation to Jesse. It has to be plausible. Of course, it was in the Roomba. That's why, and it's okay. Now I can sleep at night. He wouldn't have rested just knowing, well, you lost it, and it's okay. Like, who knows what happened to it? So anyway, interesting that they put that in the show, though. Like, all of that, there it is.
So we also see Walt hide the real ricin behind the electrical outlet.
Right. Yes. For who knows why, and at that moment, we have to assume he doesn't know why. He's just thinking, I might want to poison somebody one day. You never know. Right? Like, sometimes, you just want to have, it's kind of weird, but I guess
it's a great hiding spot.
Oh yeah. I mean,
really, really good.
Do all electrical outlets have like little, I guess I have to remember that. Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, we'll see. I think we can assume it's going to come back up, but at this point, we don't know, and I think it's safe to assume that Walt doesn't really know, but Walt assumes he's going to have need for it in the future.
Right.
Okay, so Walt and Jesse, this also, I think, needed a little explanation for me. Walt comes up to Jesse and says, hey, you ready to get back out there? And Jesse's like, yeah, sure, let's go. I mean, obviously it worked out really well, every other time we've done this. Let's keep going. What could possibly go wrong?
Well, it's kind of followed the same pattern ever since they've started. When they first started, they're like, all right, we're just going to do this. And when they killed
$700,000, that's all.
Well, no, even before that, when they killed Crazy 8, and they're like, oh, no, let's don't do that. And then like a day or two later.
No more violence.
Do you want to cook? So
right.
They get the itch every single time because they feel that they're safe now. Hey, they're safe. We don't need it. We're good. We eliminated all possible threats. Now we know how to do it the correct way. And so with this whole process of getting Gus out.
Right. But every time they do that, there's less of a reason to do that because they know, the first time it's like, oh man, there's this guy named Tuco out there. Well, no, the first time it's like, man, there's this guy named Crazy 8 out there. Like that guy might kill us. We're going to have to, like, that's crazy. Then the next time it's like, well, there's this guy Tuco out there and he's really crazy. And then there's like, oh my gosh, the entire cartel could send their like crazy people out to just assassinate.
But here's the thing.
They know so much.
They know the cartel is no more now. And they know Gus is no more. And also Walt is $40,000 in the hole.
Okay, so can you explain this to me? Because I thought they were multimillionaires. I thought they all had money to burn.
So he had plenty of money, but then good old Skyler took all of it.
Wait a minute now. How much did they give Ted? Because I thought it was less than $1 million. I thought it was $700,000.
It was $600 and some $1,000, but he didn't. I don't think he had.
So Walt makes that in like a week.
Yeah, I don't think he had that kind of money anymore, and but he also had been spending it on little things here and there that you might not see. But he had a second mortgage he was paying for. He bought a couple cars. They don't go into specifics. All we know is that he said, I'm $40,000 in the hole based off of what good old Saul here did with all the money that I did have.
Well, okay. Well, we know probably the biggest expense was buying the car wash, right?
Right. Yeah, there you go.
But that's not a complete, pardon me, wash. That's an actual business. It's making money. And then remember when that scene when he's carting in all the cash and Skyler's like, oh my gosh, this is so much more than I expected. This is going to take me years to launder. And he's like, yeah. And he's like, that's right. I make a lot of money. Like, where did all that money go? Like, I know
Well,
they had the money that.
it probably went into the business also being washed. So as far as having cash on hand, it's just not there. And he might
Well,
just be
okay,
saying,
well,
"Listen, I'm used to like having a lot of money, and now I don't have a lot of
right.
influx of
Okay, so
cash."
yeah. So now we're getting to the whole reason why we're talking about this, because we're looking for a motive. Why is Walt getting back in after everything they've been through, after he's quote unquote won?
Because now they
Why
could
is
be
he
the
going to
boss.
enter the?
In their mind, again, this might be foolish, but in their mind, there is nothing else stopping them from ruling the roost. They have everything. They got the two best cooks in Albuquerque, and then they have Mike, who's obviously very good at his job. So
Yeah,
that's just
right.
kind of what they're with.
Okay. Well, I guess the question we're not going to answer right now, but it's just, I'm throwing it out there, is why is Walt doing this? Is it really because he's concerned that he's not going to have enough money to like put food on the table for his family? I don't buy it. He's got a freaking car wash. He could retire now, have the car wash, make
Yeah, he didn't even
decent
mention
money.
anything about the family. He just says he wants it's too good of an opportunity to pass up, basically.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Fair enough. So we just have to assume there's something else going on, like opportunity for glory.
Right.
Okay. And that, okay. Well, we'll have to see how this plays out, but it seems like there's more than financial necessity going on. And then Jesse, I don't know, Jesse fluctuates so much with Walt. I mean, how many times has he told Walt, "I never want to see you again. Get out of my face"? And now
Right.
he's like, "Sure, yeah, let's get back into business. Let's do that.
Well,
Let's get into
they've gone through a
that
lot together,
partnership." I know, but it's they always bump into this problem where the partnership is never really defined. Is it 50-50? Is it like who gets to, sure, they split the money 50-50, but I mean, what my point is, who gets to decide what they're going to do when the chips are down? It's
Well,
always Walt.
when you have someone that's easily manipulated paired with someone that is a master of manipulation,
Yeah, right. Right. That's a good
it's
point.
gonna
Yeah.
have that kind of play.
Okay, so we spent a lot of time talking about that, so we got to speed up. So Walt and Jesse approach Mike, and they ask him if he wants to be partners in this new great enterprise. And Mike rejects the offer, and Mike says something really interesting. He looks Walt in the eye, and he says, "You are a ticking time bomb, and I don't want to be there when you go boom." And he
Yep.
says something like, "I feel bad for Jesse," because he knows Jesse's too naive to see it.
Right.
But I'm wondering, what does Mike see?
Mike sees everything. He's been around the little bit that we know about Mike, and we know that he was a cop from Philadelphia and that he's works loss prevention, private investigation in almost every state in the U.S. He's just the best Mr. Fix-It in the whole show. And
Yeah.
I mean, it's easy for me to see like, okay, this guy's obviously been around a lot.
Well, whatever it is, we don't know it yet, but Mike sees something that terrifies him about Walt, and we have to note that in the end, he still partners up with him, even though he sees that Walt is a ticking time bomb.
Right.
Okay, so the German company sends their leadership over to help with the DEA, and they say, "We want to know." It seems like there's more people involved, and if there are, then I want to know about it. I guess that's Lydia. Lydia is the person who works for Madrigal, who's, I guess she's American. She doesn't have a German accent or anything, right? So she's sort of like an American contact with Madrigal.
Correct.
And she was the person who, I guess, was equally to blame. So she's obviously a very paranoid person. And I mean, they make fun of that, like the way she's dressed in a trench coat with these big sunglasses. And she's afraid to sit on the other side, facing Mike when she talks with him and all that. And she's comical. She's so paranoid. And here I have to say, I think, I don't know. You just said that Mike sees everything. He should have seen that this woman is not stable, and she's going to do things like what she did, which was take out his guys and even Mike in order to try to cover her own tracks.
Well, I think he did see it once he realized, and maybe you could say he didn't see, but once he figured out that Hank and Gomi froze all the bank accounts, at that point when Chow, I think it's Chow calls him and says, I need you to come over here. At that point he knew, because he even said, like, to the guy, to the assassin or whatever, like, what did she offer you? So he knew it was her at that point.
Right. Yeah, and she doesn't seem like a skilled operator. I mean, she's a mom. She's just like, she's got a sweet kid, and she's terrified when Mike's going to kill her. Like, don't let her, she
disappear.
has to find me dead. She can't have me just disappear on her. So, but somehow she's also really good at what she does, but we're not really sure what it is she does.
All we know that she helps supply the methylamine.
Yeah.
Which is the main ingredient to their product. They don't have that, they can't do anything.
Oh yeah. So when Mike gives in to her pleading and doesn't kill her, I don't know. Does Mike go soft there?
I think he was in a position where he knows that the rest of the guys, because remember, there's 8 to 11 guys or something on that list that Lydia showed him. And if he knows that he doesn't find a way to fill those bank accounts, that they are going to talk, and it wouldn't matter what was on the laptop that they froze. They need to be made whole. And the only way to do that is to start creating cash flow. And it's probably the best way to do it was through Walt and Jesse.
I see. So he's thinking of his own interest there.
Sure, yeah.
When he kills that guy and that guy kills Chow, we know that Hank he interviewed Chow. Is it not going to look super suspicious that those guys are all dead now?
Unless Mike disappeared them.
Yeah, right. Well, we'll see. It's getting harder and harder to explain. I mean, like the tangled web is getting more and more tangled.
Right.
Okay, let's talk briefly about what's going on with Skylar. So she doesn't want to get out of bed to go work at the car wash, and Walt has to like convince her to get out of bed. And then another time, she's laying there, and Walt tells her,
you're so creepy.
Whatever you're feeling about Ted, like it's all going to pass. And I'm reminded, I think, is it true that the last thing we saw was Walt hugging her, saying, "I forgive you"?
Yes.
Was that?
It's like you don't know if he's naive enough to think this is what she's worried, like sad about, is the whole Ted thing. Like, I don't think he completely understands that she now understands who Heisenberg is, to the level of what he is capable of. And he's just like, hey, don't worry about it. You'll be fine. It's just, Ted. And she's thinking, I'm married to a murderer. And where did this person come from? You don't just cook meth. You're way more than everything else. And I think he's just naive to the fact of she didn't realize it was this to this level.
Yeah, I wonder, is it safe to say that maybe she's grieving the loss of Walt?
Yeah.
Or
her own life.
And her, yeah, right. Like that, their life is now gone. And she's kind of moved on, right, already. Like, she wanted to file for a divorce. That was her, like, I'm ready to move on. There was that, what was the episode, Four Corners? Remember where she flips the coin?
Right.
And all that. She goes back, and it's like she's always kind of held out hope that maybe. And then when they buy the car wash, she's kind of reconciled herself to the idea, like, well, yeah, my husband, like, he makes money off meth, but it's everything's fine. I'm in control. I can control things. Everything's gonna be great because I can control things. And then I think when she realizes, oh man, my husband made a bomb and killed like these people, I think she realizes now she's not really able to escape.
Right.
Walt's not going to really let her. She thinks she's been in control this whole time. She can cook the books. She can divorce him, all these things. And what she doesn't realize is that, no, Walt Walt's ultimately gonna win.
Right. Well, and she's just in a
maybe she
really
just
awful
realizes
predicament
that.
because it's like her brother-in-law, DEA agent, they have a son. Like the cartel was after them. They,
Yeah,
yeah, it's just, and then the whole thing with Ted. So it's a little bit of everything, and she just doesn't know what to do.
right. And Walt tries to comfort her by saying that he does what he does for good reasons, and that there's no better reason than family. And that's
Right.
the line. It's interesting that he brought it back up because we actually haven't heard him say it in a long time. I think it's maybe been since season 1 when he was just saying and telling himself and telling her, "That's why I'm doing this. That's why I'm doing this." When he's
Yeah,
blown up
it's
like
just so creepy.
everything. Yeah, I mean, he's blown up his family and his life with his family in
Mm-hmm.
order to preserve his family. I mean, that's the place that he's taken things.
Mm-hmm.
That's where we are now. And you're right. He seems oblivious to where she actually is and what's going on.
Did you notice in the conversation in Saul's office between Saul, Jesse, and Walt when they're trying to decide what to do, how to restart the business, and Saul takes a 180. Everything up
Yeah,
until this point, he's been trying to get them to start the business and to create cash flow because it's more for them means more for him. And he was like, "Hey, how about we just stop while we're ahead, count our
right,
blessings, and then go from there."
right.
And that's just completely not him. So Saul is also, I think, feeling a little overwhelmed.
Yeah, well, we remember with last episode when we recognized that Walt had kind of flipped the power dynamic of that relationship, where
Right,
Saul had kind of been the one that he kind of worked for Walt and Jesse. I mean,
right.
he did what they wanted. On the other hand, he kind of told them what to do, and they had to follow it. And he always kind of had the superior wisdom. But when he tries to break things off with Walt, and Walt says, "We're done when I say we're done," and he does that
Mm-hmm.
beta dog thing where he doesn't look Walt in the eyes, then I think we realize, wow, Saul's in a different place now. And now he's sort of looking constantly for a way to convince them to hang it up so that he can move on. Because as long as they're doing business, they're not going to let Saul go. So he's in a way as their slave. He
Yeah.
has to work for them as long as they say.
Mm-hmm. And we also, just a little part, Hank and Gomi have a sit down with their boss, and their boss, rightfully says, "You were right all along, great police work," but they got to pin the blame on someone, and so he's stepping down.
The bosses.
Correct. Because
He's
no one believed Hank. Hank was the only one that said, "Hey, I think Gus is this kingpin," and no one believed him.
Oh, I guess I missed that somehow. So he's taking the blame because someone says, "Hey, how come we didn't see this?"
Right. I mean,
And
they
he has
didn't
to say,
say that
actually,
verbatim, but they basically said they got to pin it on somebody. But he was like, I had him over. I had Gus over for dinner. We barbecued in the backyard together. He met my family,
yeah,
and I think he said something to the effect of he was someone else completely right under my nose, and
hmm
it's just zooming in on Hank, and from the viewers like you and I, we know that Walt is right under
we're thinking,
Hank's
right,
nose, and he doesn't know also. So small world,
right,
I guess.
right.
Well, we appreciate everyone listening. We always ask if you enjoyed this episode and all the other ones that you like, share, and subscribe. We really appreciate all the feedback we hear from you on Apple Podcasts and on YouTube. And we ask you to follow us as well on Twitter at Breaking Into BB. And always break into another episode with us and Breaking Bad.